Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance Perspectives podcast. This is part 2 of our series on Certificial. On today's show, we have Pete Teresi.
Doing. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate you having me.
Good to have you back. And from Paradiso Financial and Insurance Services, we have Chris Paradiso and Stephanie Fanelli Martaccio.
Thank you.
Hello.
If you missed part 1 on our series on Certificial, strongly encourage you to go back and give it a listen to dive deep into the technology and the reason behind Certificial with Pete. For part 2, we're going to turn to a mutual customer of both HawkSoft and Certificials, Paradiso Financial and Insurance Services, to learn how Certificial is used inside a real insurance agency, and not to be too ingratiating to our guests, but used inside one of the best independent insurance agencies out there, whose I'm sure reputation precedes them. Super happy that they're on with us today. This is a special episode. Normally we only have one guest, but we're very fortunate to have 2 guests from Paradiso Insurance. Chris, Paradiso doesn't need a lot of an introduction. I'm going to do my best. I think because of Chris's work in being a champion for the industry and being an advocate for independent agents through things like his magazine, Last Agent Standing, huge fan. And I don't say, like, I'm a younger guy. I'm a millennial. We're critical of everything. But I have had some firsthand experiences with Chris during presentations at Hug events or phone calls between HawkSoft and Paradiso. The real McCoy is how we would phrase it. Someone who has both great thoughts and lives those actions in their execution at the agency every day. So Chris, I'm grateful that you're here. I almost wore red. You're a good champion for wearing red. Is it Red Fridays?
Red Friday. Remember
right.
everyone deployed. Remember everyone deployed. Every Friday we wear red until they all come home.
I love it. You do also a lot of charity work, a lot of community involvement, and you're a very busy, in-demand individual, so I'm glad you're here with us. Also here is Stephanie, who is the VP of Commercial Lines for Paradiso Financial and Insurance Services. Stephanie, you've been with the agency for about nearly 15 years, if not more.
Yeah, she's put up with me all that time, Kenny.
Yes, I have.
And this is, I think maybe we've had dinner together once in Vegas, if I'm remembering correctly, which was a meal that was a blast. I think we talked a little insurance, but mostly just life stuff. I'm super glad that we get to be on the call again today. I'm excited to hear from the agency oversees some pretty substantial commercial lines accounts. And so I'm super excited to dive into this conversation about how Certificial is helping the agency with those. I'm really happy that you guys are here. It means a lot to me that you would set time away from your busy days, because every independent agent is busy. The volume of work that goes through a Paradiso Financial and Insurance Services is probably a little higher than your average agency. Without further ado, I want to dive into these questions. We have, just like with our partners, we have 5 questions for our customers, our agency participants, and we love to start with the story. Story is very important to who we are and what we do. And so I would love to have you guys talk about the agency. How long has it been in business? How many people work there? What do you specialize in? What gets you excited about insurance?
There's roughly about 70 plus people, 74, 75. We've been on a hiring spree the last 90 days, so closer to 75. We have a few niches. Our largest niche is parcel delivery, anything that is taking a package and delivering a package anywhere in the world or anywhere in the United States. That's one of our major niches and our largest niche, AKA I would call it a program. And I know a lot of people say, hey, what's the difference? There are big differences. I would say, hey, it's a niche. Most agencies don't know the difference, but it's more of a program than it is an actual niche. We've been in business since 2006, June 19th. And Stephanie has put up 4 years after that, roughly 2010, she's come on board. And I had to make some major changes because I failed as a leader, and I was able to let everybody go. And I know it kind of sounds crazy, but help them find another position with another agency and start from scratch, and then have to really work on becoming a better leader. And as crazy as it sounds, Stephanie was numero uno, number one. Right, Steph? It was just me and you in the very beginning after I had to let everybody go because of my poor leadership. So it's been a whirlwind of 14 years. So in the last 14 and a half years, it went from Stephanie and I to 73 others. So wow. It's a wild ride. And I think coming from my point of view is very different than coming from Stephanie's point of view, only because one's more internal inside. And, the last, I would say 8-9 years, mine has been much more from the outside. So I'll let Stephanie fill in a little bit of the gaps about the roller coaster and the ride.
No, it has been a great ride. I came on board, like Chris said, in 2010. We had since then grown each team greatly. Each experience with a client has been what we focus on. Like we've talked about, getting the app, getting Certificial, getting all of these different technologies so that we can build an agency that focuses on our clients, our customers, our community. And that's really where we focus. As we have grown, things always change, things always get better. And it's been a nice long ride.
That's fantastic. And Chris, I appreciate your candidness in this and sharing that story. I know you've shared it elsewhere, but I think it's important for people to recognize that sometimes what feels like a reset isn't necessarily a backwards motion. There's still forward progress because you've learned from that experience. I would love to know, because you both have dedicated so much of your lives to insurance, what gets you excited about it?
Stephanie and I are going to answer that very differently, and I'm going to let Steph answer first, because what I'm going to say probably scares her more than what actually gets me excited.
For me, it's just doing what we do with different clients. You learn different types of clients, different industries. I came from a background prior to working in an independent agency where everything was cookie cutter contractors. And I can honestly say, since I've been working for Chris, I have not seen risks come across my desk like I do here. But it's nice to build a relationship with a client, have that in-depth conversation of, what do you do? How did you get into your business? And tell me about your business, and learning about all the different industries that there are out there, and just kind of meeting new people and trying to help them protect and grow where their focus is. And to me, that's what makes it fun coming to work every day, and the people.
Excellent.
We have a great team.
Now, Chris, what about you? What's the scary answer?
Change. Push. Get uncomfortable. Every single day I wake up, and if you really want to know, the last 90 days I've focused on the biggest fear in my life, which is claustrophobia. So I get in a hot tub and I shut the hot tub and I set the alarm for 10 minutes. And it still gives me anxiety thinking of it, but change.
Sure.
I think we can change the industry. I think Peter said it in episode 1, we are so far behind. At the end of the day, the behindness is detrimental to the customer experience. And we need to open our eyes, carriers, agencies, management systems, and we have to become better partners for the end result. The winner is the client. Yeah. And we have an obligation, in my opinion, as one: technology, carriers, management systems, agencies. I don't throw blame to you, Kenny, in the HawkSoft. I don't throw blame to Peter in technology. I throw blame to all of us. We need to look in the mirror, come together, work harder, and make the experience better. And that's only going to come through change.
I love that. Also terrified by that. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what am I actively afraid of? I'm not the biggest fan of heights. I can live with it, but exposure to spiders, definitely. I lived in Japan for a number of years, and there's some big spiders on that island. So I got over my fear. We have tiny little baby spiders here in Oregon, and so just hopefully no one ever sits on the hot tub lid and locks you in there. But that that answer has me pumped up. Like I'm like, just pause this recording. I'm gonna go do some work. Fantastic. Thank you for that.
Stephanie's been around it for 14 years, and I think the last 8 have been obsessive. So she kind of doesn't cringe quite as much as she used to when she hears some of the ridiculous things that I don't like, but I am going to do because I am not going to be a slave to that fear. We have to face the fear. Change is fear. There's 3 things in life that are going to happen. You are going to die, Kenny, and I am not God.
Yeah.
That is a guarantee. You are going to die. You are going to pay taxes, and change is going to happen. Those 3 things are going to happen no matter what industry we're in or what world we're living in. Those 3 things are guarantees.
Absolutely. I could stay on this tangent forever, but I do want to explore how Certificial is used inside the agency. So I'm going to jump into that. As an agency, with that specialized focus in parcel delivery, I imagine there's a lot of struggles that you face in that complex world, that point of time delivery, the transit, the trucking, warehouses, all of that fun stuff that comes with the delivery of goods of such a vital need in the United States. I would love to know, what were you looking for when you first encountered Certificial? What was the pain point that drove that?
Well, I think the number one pain point for me as an agency owner was the cost of doing business. How expensive is a certificate of insurance? And if we asked Peter, does Peter even know? And I know there's going to be a wide variety. How many certs? Is it non-standard, non-admitted versus admitted? Do you have to get permission? Is there funky language? I know there's a multiple of answers based on dollars amount, but a very close friend of mine down in Florida, for his agency, he sits on top of Atomic. So he knows exactly what his cert costs are. And obviously being out of Florida can be a little different, depends on where you are in the country. But when he ever said that it's costing $18 for every certificate, he said, Chris, it blew my mind away that it's costing us that much. And why is that? I don't think we realize it was kind of like figuring out every check we sent out is costing the agency $9.51. What a waste. So how do we figure out how to curb that cost? Now, if you're going to ask Stephanie, and the reason why you have 2 guests from Paradiso is because one is doing it every single day, and I am not. And I think people need to hear, okay, you heard why I seeked out somebody like Peter and Certificial, but maybe Stephanie, it would be a little bit different.
Yeah, Stephanie, what drew you in and maybe made Certificial click for you in how the agency could leverage it?
One of the things is it takes our policies as they come in from the download and the coverages are there. But the other thing that Certificial allows us to do is attach the blanket waiver of subrogation and the blanket additional insured endorsement, so that when you push through that certificate, all of those documents are in one attachment. So it's not like you have to create the certificate in HawkSoft and then attach it and then go back in and drag and drop the waiver of sub and then the additional insured endorsement and then send it out. It's one step. And while it doesn't seem like it's a lot to do all 3 of those things, but that's probably a 15-minute process, where with Pete's system, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So it just streamlines and makes the process go a little easier for us.
Kenny, and you totally add that hundreds of thousands of times for the average commercial agency. Now, granted, if you're a smaller operation, you might say you do 1 or 2 or 3 certificates a day. But when you're in the hundreds a day, those minutes actually help the bottom line substantially.
Absolutely.
And there are vendors that require certificates, and they do require that specific wording. And some of them come through Certificial the opposite direction. So they're requesting a certificate from us. And that matching of the wording is so much easier in Certificial than it is, because they are super picky. And if you miss a period or a comma, they reject your certificate. That way, it doesn't seem to be as much of a problem.
That makes total sense. And I think this is a conversation I've probably had with Pete over the years, but for tech in the technology world, we've solved for saving you hours of work. The effort that we put in nowadays is, how do we save you minutes? How do we shave off minutes and seconds from the tasks that you do repetitively? Because to me, like, that's your expertise is in, when that unique risk comes across your desk, Stephanie, it's being able to apply your experience and your acquired knowledge and saying, like, here's how I can protect this customer. And it's not in, here are the 14 steps I have to go through to issue this certificate. Like, that's not what you should have to worry about. And so I love that perspective, that it's saving you that time, and making things semi-automatic, automated, efficient. It gives me a good bridge into our third question, which every time I get a chance to peek at Certificial, there's a whole new wing of technology in it. I remember the first time I saw it, and they were doing some amazing things with just that digital verification, and then each subsequent time, you know, traditional PDF versions of a COI requests, being able to monitor that whole thing. There's a ton of features inside Certificial that I really encourage people to go seek out their website and talk to their team about getting the full list of them. But Stephanie, for your perspective as someone working in it day to day, what can Paradiso Insurance do now with Certificial that you could not do before?
As I brought up earlier, so a year ago, we went through and we created a master list for every client inside of Certificial with every certificate we've ever sent them. We then, for the first time, sent them a link with every certificate they have on file and said, here is all of your certificates for the upcoming year. We will send them if you want us to, but here's access for you to have them. You can save them, you can hold on to them, you'll always have them for you. And here is the link to sign up for Certificial, so that if on off hours you need a basic certificate that doesn't require a change in the wording, you're free to do that and continue on issuing your proposals or doing whatever it is, because we're not here 24/7. And that was received so well by so many of our clients, because they now have that access themselves, and even just a bank of all of the certificates that we issue, so that if they need to repeat them, they have them and they don't need to wait for us to answer an email or pick up the phone.
It's brilliance, Kenny. It's absolute brilliance for one reason. We need to look in the lens of our clients. And Peter and his team have allowed us to do that. Stop looking from your lenses and start looking from their lenses. And think about the ability to then, okay, I need this certificate, I need that certificate, because they're being audited. How many audits they come back and say, oh, I need that certificate, I need that. I mean, think about how much time that just saved our agency in the aggravation of Stephanie and having to go back in and resend all this stuff. I just don't think agents realize the brilliance behind that one thing. One thing. That is, I mean, I'm speechless, because I just think the customer and the client wins. The agency won big, the client won even bigger. At the end, Peter and his team have created something spectacular for us. Not only time, not only money, but our clients win, and then we win. We win only when our clients win. And I'm not sure a lot of people realize that. A lot of technology doesn't realize that.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys saying that. And you know, it's interesting. I love listening to the conversation. I mean, a few things that resonate with me is, before we even, started Certificial, I was speaking with, some independent agents and hearing about how they were contemplating not renewing customers. it was costing them more money to service a client than it, because of COIs. To those stats you shared, which were actually quite impressive, Chris. I don't actually have all the dollars and cents down to those details, but I know when I hear an agent basically saying, I don't know if I even want to keep this customer because they've got so many COI requests that it's just not worth it to me. Losing money, that that there's a bleed that's happening that could easily be solved in technology. I mean, come on, this is a complex process, but we don't need to overly, there's ways of simplifying. There's ways to enable some automation. There's a lot of manual stuff in this that, even someone like Stephanie, we want to empower her and her team to be able to take the valuable skills they bring and focus on those, not the mundane manual parts of the process, right? That then take away from those value added services, So it's, of course, as you can imagine, I'm in complete agreement with the team here. But there's another aspect of this which I'll add in, and I think it's, again, I focus quite a bit on E&O risk. There's elements of the automation that I believe are helping further reduce that. When you look at, especially in a business like Paradiso's run, you look at autos and schedules information and scheduled auto and VIN numbers and vehicles, and a vehicle can get decommissioned tomorrow. It's going to remain on a cert for the next 12 months. I got news for you. Not in all world. You know what I mean? So, it's that type of automation that not only is that stopping a manual process, but it's helping with, actually with risk, which is what this process was defined, created to do, reduce risk, not create it. Right. And every time I see a COO creating risk and creating E&O exposure for an agency, that bothers me. We got to figure out ways to not only automate that, but get rid of that risk that's unnecessary.
Yeah. 100%. There's a lot of gears turning in my head right now. And I think that, in part one, we gave Pete an opportunity to talk about maybe some rough parts with working with independent agents. And we like to do the same for our agency guests, and put the shoe on the other foot. I don't often abuse the soapbox I have with this platform. Hopefully this will maybe be the first and only time. I'm going to expand the question I normally ask. Feel free to think about Certificial and HawkSoft with this question. And if there is one thing that you could change or would change about Certificial, or about how Certificial and HawkSoft work together, if you could, what would you change and why? Maybe throw this to Stephanie first.
I would say the only where it became a hiccup in the beginning was that because HawkSoft does allow you to pick your own coverage names and limits and label them the way you want. Certificial only reads that one way, which is good, but in the same aspect, it is also a hiccup. So it's not even so that we could do it better. It would just be that you had different options maybe, or that Certificial would read it multiple ways. But then again, it would take me a little while to dive into that and see where that next, because as Pete says, E&O is a huge thing where that could cause a gap or a problem. But that is the only one hiccup thing. And I'm not sure how that can be changed unless, HawkSoft limits what you can label something. But then on, for other platforms, I don't know if it would hold things up in that respect.
You're saying the data mapping, if you could kind of wave a wand, it would be simpler for you to navigate as an agent.
Yeah. And I mean, it's because unfortunately sometimes too, it takes a resource of Pete's team to sit there with us and we're screen sharing saying, okay, why? What am I missing? What are you seeing? Or why is this not mapping 100% the way it should be? And that's, a resource for us and a resource for Pete. And it's just, it may not need to be. But that would be my only negative at all. And that's not, it's probably 1 out of every 100 certificates that we have that weird mapping issue. And that could even come from the carrier download. I know that does come from the carrier download overriding sometimes what we do.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stephanie. We have to do more and more with adding more ways of mapping data in. It's a constant challenge on our end is how much of a battle do you want to fight data standardization? But I will tell
And
you
that's
guys,
not my strong suit.
and it's a balancing act. It's a balance because you can't go full on because it becomes too limiting. Your exact point is exactly right. But you also, can't have the Wild West either because there are downstream disadvantages of that we are able to do with that information that actually brings the agency value. And so we try and balance to say, well, let's solve this to a point where it's not so limiting as causing issues getting, the use of the system, but let's not open it up so much that we then don't have a return of value coming back from that information. Like you mentioned, certificate holders, and how they're able to accept language or report on limits. One of the things we haven't spoken about is sometimes COIs are issued 3-5 times before they're accepted. You know what I mean?
Yes.
With data standardization and with the proper connection of systems, we can avoid that before even issuing it one time, right? If we know that what's being requested matches the data that's coming in, that's on the form and all of that, to be able to bring that to the forefront, is the goal there. But I agree. I think Stephanie hit it with the challenge for sure.
Okay. Chris, do you have a different perspective, or do you agree, kind of as sitting at a higher level inside the agency, is there anything that you would change about Certificial or how Certificial and HawkSoft work together?
No,
Apart from what Stephanie mentioned.
I actually think what we hit on now is something that was never talked about is when we talk about standards, downloading. Well, okay, now nothing's really in sync, right? It's either black or white in my world. And if we could get everything in the black and white world and there's not gray, we probably would eliminate a lot of hiccups. And I know these hiccups are thorns in the sides to service reps, to staff.
Yeah.
But on the flip end, we're fortunate. We know there's going to be hiccups. It's technology. But when you have Certificial, and Stephanie has already said in episode 1, their service team is great. We don't say that lightly in technology. Everybody we work with is not great when it comes to the service team. So we are fortunate that Peter and his partner are great leaders, and they follow up to make sure, is what I try to do. We're going to make mistakes. We're humans. There's technologies, there's hiccups, but how we resolve the problem is really what says a lot. So.
Absolutely. Brings us to the last question I have for us here, and we've touched on this throughout the conversation, both in part 1 and here in part 2. But I would love to know for each perspective from the agency, because I think it's important, and one of the things I'm grateful about having Chris and Stephanie on this episode is I think that a lot of times an agency owner might make a technology decision that impacts a member of the team that is doing more of the day-to-day work, more of the hands-on work. And so it's nice to have that perspective along with Stephanie as the VP of Commercial Lines, who is doing the more hands-on, leading that team that's working with Certificial. I'd love to know for both of you, in your unique perspectives inside the agency, what is the value that Certificial brings to Paradiso financial and insurance services?
You want to answer first, Steph?
Yeah. For me, it streamlines the process. It makes it much more effective and simpler to issue a certificate. I know the crazy language ones are not the same, but to just be able to go in, issue a certificate, share the certificate, it does streamline the process. And I mean, there is the difference between Chris and I and knowing the numbers of what everything costs. When he says the cost of it, it's a little, it takes you away a little bit and how much it actually costs to do a certificate. And that is streamlined using Pete System.
Excellent. And Chris, how about for you?
I think the number one thing is I am hyper focused on the lens of the client. So are we giving our clients what they want when they want it, not when we want it? Well, we close at 5:30. Well, you know what? A lot of business people start, like myself, at 3:30 in the morning. And at 8 o'clock, they're still working. But you know what? The agency's not open. And we have to stop thinking for ourselves and really think about our clients. And I think Certificial, I think the one downside to Certificial is they don't charge. Now, agents are probably throwing pie at the screen right now, but I think what people think is when they're not charged for something, it's not worthy. And I try to explain to people, get past that it's free, because it's not really free. And I think agents have to expand the way they're thinking. I know a lot of things that are free aren't worth having, but Certificial is 100% worth having inside of an agency, for your client's sake. So I just hope that they look at it with an open mind. And I will give a shout out to Pete, because I think Pete has seen a lot of the struggles from the point, and I think a lot of technology companies, where they miss the boat is they don't sit in the control in the cockpit of flying the plane. It's easy to sit in the back because somebody's trusted up there. But when you're Stephanie and you're utilizing it all the time, I think what Pete and his team have done very well is they've sat in our seat and they've acknowledged our pain points. What a lot of technology insurtechs don't do. And I don't think that their technology stinks. I think it's a lot. The best technology doesn't win all the time. I will say the best technology doesn't win a lot of times, but the technology that's winning are the leaders of these technology companies sitting in our seats and understanding our pain points. And when they do that, they solve a real problem. And Certificial has.
Appreciate it.
I think that is maybe a fantastic note to end on. This has been an excellent conversation. I am extremely grateful, Stephanie, Chris, for you guys giving time away from your agency today, braving a mild snowstorm to get into the office to be with us. Pete, thank you so much for joining the conversation as well, and for being in the hot seat in part one. I'm really grateful for you guys' time. It is always an absolute pleasure Chris, to get to talk to you about your perspective on things, and getting to know your team members better. Stephanie, so good to talk to you again.
But Kenny, I got to interrupt you. Thank you to
Please.
HawkSoft for listening to agents. It's not said enough. Our team talks about it all the time. We have guests fly in from Indiana last week. Man, you guys love HawkSoft. It's not about me loving HawkSoft. It's about my teammates loving HawkSoft. You see how they love it? Because HawkSoft listens to us. They listen to the agents. They solve problems. I'm not going to go on a rant, but I am thankful every day for HawkSoft to listening to agents and to bettering the tech and partnering with people like Peter and Certificial, which is hugely important to us agents winning. So thank you to HawkSoft for doing that.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. I always say if I'm having a bad day, I just call an agent, because talking with customers is an immediate way to solve a problem, do something good, learn something. So I appreciate you mentioning that. It really does. It's what makes us tick, talking to agencies and working with them. Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the video description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode, as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast. Thank you.